Yes, sir. Nicks and Bruises, we back in the building. Shout out to the chat. Josh, shout out to you. Thanks for being back. Your blackest time. Um, yeah. I want to start off with last year it was a lot of talk about our success and how we were in a weak Eastern Conference and a lot of teams had injuries and a lot of teams had to deal with COVID. And I just want to tell people to keep that same energy this year while we're going through it. Because we're seeing, career numbers, career games from people, and then bang, they got COVID
Right.
consecutively. Because like back to back, I'm like, yo, what is going on? Like we're seeing the best from guys, and then they got to sit out. And yeah, that's just crazy. Never seen nothing like it. I don't follow other teams, so I don't know if that's what other teams were going through as far as like career numbers and career games from guys, and then they got to sit out 10 days and all this. But yeah, just keep that same energy with us. What's going on, Josh?
Salute, man. Salute. Always a pleasure being on here. Team is not doing so well right now, but I think there's somebody at the end of the tunnel. I think people are overreacting, grossly overreacting, because the expectations that they had, and the team is not living up to them. I thought, 50 burger and all that, the Knicks winning 50 something games and being top three in the conference. I thought that was crazy to even think that. And now we're seeing that this Eastern Conference is improved. It's a better conference, and the Knicks are, they got going through some COVID protocols right now. And I'm not supposed to say the C word. I said health and safety protocols right now. And it's affecting the team. And there's a lot of storylines that are happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. So I'm just telling people to just relax. I think things are going to turn around for us. If not, then we have flexible enough contracts that we can be able to move out of them. So that's just how I'm feeling. But thanks for having me on, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Of course, bro. Of course. I love having you on always as well. Um, and this health and safety protocol thing that's going on. It could be, or let me rephrase it. Do you think it can be a blessing in disguise? Especially with when it's happening and how it's happening. With these guys having their best performances, breakout performances, like I said, career performances, and then still having to work their way back now and find their way back, and who knows what they're coming back to. Um, how do they keep that same energy and continue to succeed when they come back? Um, and I don't know if you want to go by individual players or just in general as the group. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll call it a blessing in disguise, because obviously, you want to see these guys play. You don't. Hopefully, they don't. They're uninfected or have the C word. So I want to say blessing in disguise. I won't use that term. However, I do think it is a positive thing to see some of these guys play, have major minutes. During the time when the team is depleted, they don't have enough bodies. And you're seeing some of these rookies like Grimes and McBride step out and have career games. And you're seeing Emmanuel quickly, shoot very well from the field and be a little bit more decisive on the floor. You see Obi Toppin finally have a game where he can be a reliable scorer, right? So I do think it is a positive thing. It's going to be interesting to see what Tibbs does with these guys when they come back off the protocols. I think Tibbs finally realizes that he has some guys that he can probably trust out there, but only time will tell. We got to get these guys healthy, and then we'll be able to find out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I and Tibbs is gonna have a decision to make once we're whole again. Because guys have stepped up. They've been preaching that stay ready mentality, and that's one thing. If there's a positive on the season so far, I think that's got to be it. Guys have waited their turn, stayed ready, and performed when they got their opportunities. And I think if nothing else, shout out to you and your show, The Controversy. I saw it earlier, and you guys were speaking about um that the young guys are developing, and because there's been a question mark out there amongst Knicks fans as why aren't the young guys developing? I think that is a prime example of development. In its core, it doesn't have to be getting all the minutes as far as that's the way you develop a guy, but teaching him he has to stay ready. He has to wait his turn. He has to earn everything he gets. I think that's more important in developing a young guy and preparing him for the long term future. I think that's the way to go. That's the way the league used to be, I love to see that for sure.
But not even just that. What about in the limited minutes that these young guys are getting? They're producing in that little bit of time, right? The Knicks have the number one scoring bench in the NBA right now, and that's primarily due to young guys. You got Emmanuel Quickly and Obi Toppin, and then depending on what happens with Tibbs and the rotations, you add in Quentin Grimes to that, maybe a Deuce McBride. I think the bench is not going to miss a beat. Right. So, it's all about, for me, I look at the development of Obi Toppin from year one to year two. Obvious difference, right? Defensively, he's a little bit much better. He's much better defensively. Offensively, he has a lot more confidence. He's not afraid to take some shots. He's making, some good finishes at the basket. We all know he's a highlight reel dunker, but the little things, the hustle plays. Obi Toppin's definitely improved from year one to year two. Look at Emmanuel Quickly. He's much more under controlled. He does, kind of take some shots and go crazy sometimes, but he's a shot maker. He has the ability to knock those shots down. Right. And we've seen Emmanuel Quickly, being much more of a willing passer and, showing some IQ, no pun intended. Right. So there is some development happening amongst these guys. And I just challenge any Knick fan that says, the opposite. I think these kids are developing under Tom Thibodeau. Just because we're not seeing them play major minutes does not mean they're not developing. So when Queen and a lot of people say you got to, figure out which way the Knicks want to go, is it going to be with Julius Randle or it's going to be with the kids? To me, that was never a question. Right, because I believe the Knicks are still doing both. They're still trying to figure out a way to win games now, and they're also trying to figure out a way of keeping some of these young guys around for the long term. So to me, it's not an either or. I think both are happening at the same time.
I agree, but I agree to an extent because I do think bringing a guy like Tibbs in, it was more of a win now situation. Bring guys in, bring veterans in, bring stars in, and 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 uh and not necessarily utilize the youth as assets more so. I believe that was the thinking in bringing Tibbs in. Um, so that's the only part in which I disagree, and maybe Tibbs is having that little tug of war with the organization over um who he needs and who he wants and the direction of where we're going and what we're doing so far. Um, but the highlight of today's show really is probably going to be Julius Randle. It's been a lot of talk in the media in the fellow podcast world and the blogs about Randall's leadership and it being called into question. And obviously everybody, he's not the number one option on the championship team or whatever the case is. But the fact of the matter is he's our number one option, right? Like we don't have a guy better. We don't have a guy necessarily better suited. Um, and we need him to be that. We need him to be the best him, and he has been underperforming this year. And I want to see if we can unpack it and figure out why. Um, any thoughts before I have a couple numbers written down. I'll get to those, but any thoughts on Randall this year or why he's struggling? What might help?
So first and foremost, just because you're the best player in the team doesn't make you the leader of the team. Right. I think those terms often get, put in the same sentence as if they're one and the same, which they're not. Right. The Knicks have a ton of veterans on this team. As we all know, there's Taj Gibson, there's Derrick Rose, there's Fournier, there's Kemba Walker. Right. These are veterans that were brought in by the front office. Right. To help with the leadership aspect of it. Now, Julius Randle is our best player. I would say that unequivocally. There's nobody on this team that is better than Julius Randle that has his skill set and that can be able to do what he can do night on a night and a night out basis. There is just no one. Right. However, in that locker room, when we talk about leadership, I think we have to look at the other veterans as well. Right. I think the other veterans as well who've been in the league for much longer time period, the Kembas, the Taj Gibsons, Derrick Rose, I think they hold just as much. If you want to criticize Julius Randle for his leadership, I think they deserve a little bit of that blame as well. It doesn't have to be the best player to be your leader. It just needs to be, someone to lead that locker room. Right. So I understand that Julius Randle's not playing his best basketball right now, but he's still
Mm.
producing, right? He's still producing. The team relies on him to go out and get stuff done. Now, has he been doing that? No. He has not been producing on a night in and night out basis. However, what he gives us, he still gives us rebounding, still gives us assists. I understand that there's turnovers that are there, but that's due to the team not really having a true point guard or not playing a true point guard, right? So, a lot of these things that we talk about in regards to Randle, I think that it's fair to mention, but I don't think that's just the main problem on this team in regards to his leadership. And I don't think he's really the true leader in that locker room, in my opinion.
Yes, salute, salute. Definitely shout out to the chat. I appreciate you guys joining in. I see still Knicks fan in there. He shouts out your show earlier. So salute to the controversy, of course. If you haven't watched it, it's on the MBK channel. And good content. Always great content. Queen's Court as well. She'll be on tonight at 8 o'clock. So I hope to see y'all there as well. Um, you made some real interesting points. One about the point guard who is, obviously the true leader on the floor. Traditionally, and yes, that has been a lacking hole for years and years in the organization. But and then you also said about the veterans who should be held accountable as far as leadership. And you're right. Like you can't question, or there's no doubting whether Derrick Rose is a true leader. Obviously, he's here to mentor, so he's taking up that role 100%. Taj Gibson, true vet, does everything he's supposed to do, says everything he's supposed to do. Um, do you think those two guys though are more of a and Kimber too? Maybe I'll bring back Kimber in a second. But do you think those guys are leading by example, or they have to be the leaders like on the floor, and then also, do you think you could have your leaders of the team not be the starters of the team? Like does is there any conflict, or is it hard for them to lead a Julius Randle per se, who we're saying may not have those leadership qualities, or leads in different ways, maybe by example. um ha- Now I'm not saying he doesn't respect those guys, but how do they lead him? Rose maybe because he's been in that number one
That's what
role
I was going to say.
before.
That's what I was going to say.
You know what I mean. So yeah. But it, does he even feel comfortable doing that? The is he does he not do that because, like, does Julius have to come to him and ask the questions and pick his brain, or is it Rose's job to see maybe he's struggling, and do you think it's absent? And because I'm really trying to get to the root of how do we change this with Randall. I was one of the guys who defended him prior to last year, and had the little tidbit of, are we going to owe him an apology, and we sure enough did, and I'm hoping again he could bring that same energy.
So I just want to highlight. So when we talk about leadership, how do you quantify leadership? I don't think you can. Right? I don't think you can. I think if the Knicks would be, 4 games over 500, everyone would say the leadership is great, and they can still be having the same playing style. Last season, Julius Randle, a lot of the things he's doing this season, he was doing last season. Right? No one questioned his leadership then. I think the leadership word or lack thereof when people talk about the Knicks, I think it's just because the team is just in a tough funk right now. Right? I don't think it's anything as in regards to leadership. I think as far as Randall's concerned. As far as Randall's concerned, I don't think that everything that we're talking about, these questions, are necessarily true. And I think that because the team is losing, there's automatically an assumption that there's a lack of leadership going on somewhere, somehow. That very well might be the case. We just don't know that. But what I'm trying to say is there's no way to actually quantify leadership. In regards to Derrick Rose, I do think Derrick Rose is someone that Julius Randle can go to. I think Derrick Rose was here in New York before Randle got here. I'm trying to look at the timeline. I think he was here, right? So he understands what it's like to play in New York. And like you said, he understands what it's like to be a number one option, right? So I think Julius Randle does absolutely ask those questions. And, there's different ways to lead. Some people are more vocal. Draymond Green is a vocal leader, right? And then you have
Mm-hmm.
guys who don't really say as much, like a Tim Duncan, who let their actions on the court, lead, right? So there's multiple
Mm-hmm.
ways to do it. I think Knick fans, us, being at home, watching the TV screen, watching this team play day in and day out, we want to see someone vocal. We want to see someone angry. We want to see someone fiery, because that's just the New York way. But maybe Julius Randle's not that kind of guy, right?
But
So,
but we need that. If it's not him, we still need it.
right,
Like Tim Duncan wasn't the guy, but they had guys. They
right,
they had guys that were like when I'm saying with leadership, we're lacking, and it doesn't have to be Randall per se, but a galvanizer, somebody who's actually bringing the team together as a whole. Like I definitely see it. I see it from Rose, but I see it more with the younger guys than with a Randall. I mean, yeah, Randall in particular. So and that's what I'm saying. But like the same arguments people had with Carmelo Anthony about his leadership, and like that's what they're giving Randall.
right,
And you know what I mean. And granted, different people lead different ways,
right.
so it doesn't have to be him. I agree.
Well,
But we need it. We need a vocal guy. We need a galvanizer. Like these things are question marks on this team.
right. And what I'm saying is, it doesn't always have to be a vocal guy, though. And the reason why I bring up Tim Duncan, and I'm not comparing Julius Randle to Tim Duncan in regards to what they do on the floor, because that'll be that's crazy. But what I'm saying is, Tim Duncan was the leader of that San Antonio Spurs locker room, and he didn't have to say a word. Right. So different guys lead different ways. And just because we're not seeing a vocal leader or someone very demonstrative on the floor or on the bench or something like that, doesn't mean leadership is not taking place. And I think Knick
Mhm.
fans, because we're New Yorkers and we're just angry, not angry, but we're just very fiery, and we care a lot. You know what I'm saying? Just because we don't see that, I think automatically there's an assumption that there's leadership lacking on this team, from Julius Randle specifically. Right. And I just don't want to go that route, because again, it's a lot of stuff that we don't know. Now, there is some question marks in the locker room, and I think we're going to talk about sometime down the line. There is some question marks that I do have, right? But again, I don't, I'm not going to go and say that the Knicks are lacking leadership in the locker room, because quite frankly, we just don't know.
Do you think we have leadership? Or do you think Randall is the like? Granted, he's the leader as far as the scorer. You know what I mean? Like the
Mhm.
go to guy. But I'm talking about as far as like a galvanizer. Um, Somebody who's gonna actually hold people accountable on the floor. You know what I mean? Like, because even when he tries to do that, it kind of looks aesthetically bad. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know how it affects the team per se, but it doesn't look good visually.
Right,
So, you know what I mean? And then with the Tim Duncan thing, I agree with you. He was a leader and didn't lead vocally, but they had vocal leaders on the team with Tim Duncan, like that would speak up. You know what I mean? Tony Parker didn't hold his tongue. Manu Ginobili didn't hold his tongue. When Steve Jackson was there, he spoke up. You know what I mean? Like so that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it has to be Randall, but I think we need it on this
so
team.
all I say is, naturally on every team, I think there's a hierarchy. Naturally, that's just naturally how in any team is assembled, no matter what level of sports, or what sport you're talking about. I think naturally there's going to be some sort of hierarchy. So I think there is leadership there. Um, is the leadership performing the way we want them to perform? Again, we just don't know. And I think that if the Knicks are winning some games, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. So I think that there is leadership on the Knicks, right? I don't know who exactly the vocal leader is, or who the leader is per se, right? Julius Randle is our best player, but I can't say that he's the leader in that locker room. I can't fully go out and say that. Maybe there is a clash of leadership between the veterans. We talk about Evan Fournier and we talk about Julius Randle. These guys were getting into it on the court. They showed some fire and some passion on the floor. You know what I'm saying? When guys were missing the defensive assignment. So I think a little bit of that is there. What I will say is that whoever the leader is on this team, whoever is that galvanizer or
Hmm.
whatever that term that you use, whoever that is, we just don't know who that person is. I think that it exists. We just don't know.
and we had this discussion last year on Nothing But Knicks, and I don't recall if it was me or who it was, but somebody, ultimately he was said Tibbs is the leader of the team, and
Yeah,
and he's ruling, like with an iron fist, and that very well may be the case, and that's another discussion that we might have tonight or some other time, but
yeah. I definitely want to. I definitely want to bring that up later in regards to Kimball Walker. But I know you had some numbers for Julius Randle. I don't want to
uh, yep,
distract
yep.
you too much.
I'm getting right into that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So 45.6% from the field last year. He's at 41 so far from the field. uh 41 from three last year, 33 from three this year. um this year he's 19.6 points per game, 24.1 last year. um 34% of the team's turnovers are from Julius Randle. um that's two-thirds. That's a point over two-thirds. I mean, one, I'm sorry, one-third. But that's crazy. And then the craziest stat right now: 25% on open three-point shots. Like, and that's killing us more than anything. And not just from him. Is I think a lot of our team is missing open three-point shots right now. He was 40% last year on open threes. So it looks like a confidence thing. Like, and then you look at the 25% on open three-pointers, like, what else can that be other than confidence? But he doesn't take me as a guy who lacks confidence. But I will say, watching these games, he seems less aggressive. He does seem to be openly trying to get everyone involved. Like, almost doubling down on I am a point forward. You know what I mean? But the lack of aggression could be lack of confidence. I don't know what else it could be other than confidence. Um, but he doesn't look the same. Like, or an injury that he's quiet about. Like, those are the only two things that I could think of that it could possibly be. I know the haters will say that's who he is. Last year, look at there it is. Canal Man last year was a fluke. He said, let's be
Randle looks
real.
good.
Last year,
Randy looks good in an empty gym.
um, so I mean, I'll throw that out there too as I guess, a possibility. But what are your thoughts, man? And I'm gonna read through some of these comments and see the consensus in the chat. But what do
Well,
you think?
listen. I don't feed into last year being the fluke, and I don't feed into Randall looking good in the empty gym, the COVID year, the almighty fourth seed, as your man State NYK would say. Listen, I just think Julius Randle's in a rut right now, right? And I'm not gonna. People act like I don't ever hold him accountable. He needs to be better. Point blank, plain and simple. He's had wide open opportunities as well, catch and shoot opportunities that he's just not been making, and he has to be able to make those shots, right? You know what I mean? I'm not. I guess it's fair to hold him to an all-star caliber level because he made the all-star team last year. But again, you got to be able to knock those shots down. Point blank, plain and simple. If I had to explain the reason why he's missing open shots or why he's not playing the same way he did last year, I think this year he's still trying to figure out his role on this current team. When you add players like Evan Fournier and Kimball Walker there, and you say that the Knicks are going to try to pass the ball a lot, and then you hear things like Randall's hogging the ball, Randall's being selfish. I think that's playing a part of it. I think he's trying very hard, almost too hard, to get other people involved. Right? When people say that Randall's being selfish and he's not passing the ball, and the team always does ISO Randall, ISO this, ISO that, I just have not been seeing that type of Randall this year. And to me, I think that's detrimental to the team. Right? I want to see a more aggressive Randall. He can't be passive. Randall can't pass the ball every chance he gets down the floor. Right? Randall needs to be aggressive and go out and go get his buckets. Straight up, point blank, plain and simple, right? So I'm not defending him with that aspect. You got to be able to knock your shots down, and when it's there, pass guys the ball. right? But a lot of times you see these guys stand around and watch Randle handle the ball. No one moves without the basketball in their hand. I think the last game against the Celtics was the first game where I seen guys made a concerted effort to move without the basketball, cutting to the rim, backdoor cuts. Just look and like Randle have opportunities to get guys the ball in their spots. And that's why you see Evan Fournier have a game where he scored 30 points. And you've seen Kemba Walker, himself being a little bit more aggressive, right? Scored 29 points, right? So I want to see a little bit more of that. I think if the Knicks were fortunate against Boston, I think they would have won the game. We were very, very close until the end with like, not that many players on our roster, rotation guys in our roster, right? So again, I'm not defending Julius Randle. He needs to be better, point blank, plain and simple. But I think he is trying to kind of stuck in this point forward or bucket getter kind of role, and I think he's not handling it well. I think as time goes on, he will eventually figure it out. But right now, he's just not playing well. Not playing the best. He is producing still. He still, he still can be able to go get a bucket. He still can be able to take guys off the dribble. You know what I'm saying? He still has that ability. He's not playing his best basketball, but I don't think he is playing terrible as a lot of people would make it seem. So
Yeah, he's just not shooting well at all.
right,
Like that's what it boils down to me. To me, I mean, the stats say his defensive numbers are down. I think he has defensive lapses, but I think overall his defense has improved. And I'm just basing that off of eye tests and not like numbers per se. I think he's been pretty solid to me personally defensively, except for the lapses. Usually, like when he's yelling at a ref and his man is like running to the basket, scoring or
right,
something
right,
of that nature. And that's that's been troublesome as far as Randall all year, and you could say dating back to last year. Um, I don't know that his relationship is bad with referees, but I wouldn't be surprised if it I can only imagine it's gotten worse over the last 2 years.
right.
Based off of his reaction to refereeing. Granted, sometimes it's warranted him being upset, but his reaction, it's not gonna help any of these situations. Um and that's a huge part of leadership. I think that's another part of why, some of his leadership has been called into question. Granted, these are things you can learn from, but it's been pretty consistent over the last, year and a half.
I don't necessarily look at Randall complaining to the refs as some sort of leadership issue. I don't. I think people are just kind of feeding into that too much. I mean, should he not do it? I would say so, but I don't think that's a leadership thing. I just think that a lot of players around the league complain to the referees a lot about a lot of things, and
Yeah,
their leadership doesn't come into question. I think it's a way of it's posturing. The coaches do it all the time. No one questions their leadership when they do it.
but that's a coach that's a coach's job more than a player's job. And there's one thing for you to do it, but to like I'm not basing my opinions off of anyone else's opinion, or if that's even being chatted, in Knicks Nation. I'm basing it off what I see, and me personally, I don't like it. I think it sets a bad example. I think the timing of a lot of it is horrible, which does point to leadership, if not leadership, or just awareness. You know what I mean? But if you if you're a guy that leads by example, you can't make mental lapses. You have to be, what I mean, when you're leading by example, now your IQ has to raise, your basketball IQ. You know what I mean? If you're leading off of just your skill and your talent, and that's something different, because that's your God-given abilities. But when you're leading by example, you got to be smarter than that. And I think it sets a horrible example for some of the younger guys. I think, granted, all NBA got team last year, All Star, but I don't think he's earned the reputation to argue the way he does yet. You know what I mean? I think that's another thing that you have to earn your way into. And I don't think I think he's kind of jumping the gun and it could be messing it up for him in the long run to get that relationship with the refs and not get that
Benefit of the doubt.
yes.
So I'll say this: anytime Randall argues and it gets a technical foul, and especially in a close game, I think that's an issue, right? So I will agree with you on that, and that has happened at least once this season, right? But I have no problem with a player complaining to the referees if they think they should be able to go get a call, right? I know Clyde Frazier says all the time he never complained to the refs. I think people are just different. You know what I mean? People go about playing the basketball, playing the basketball game a little bit different, right? And I think players do this around the league all the time. It's been happening a lot more this year, particularly because of the NBA has now changed those some of the fouling rules. That's why you're seeing scoring down throughout the league. So it's happening throughout the league. And I just think that because we're in New York and we're looking at Julius Randle as the guy, right, that, it's kind of, we're just kind of putting these narratives out there. Because the team is losing, we're trying to figure out why the team is losing. It's because Julius Randle is arguing with the refs. And then there's a leadership problem. And the leadership problem contributes to losing. I just think that we're going in this, we're reaching for something that I don't think necessarily is truly there. I don't think that's the issue with the Knicks and their leadership, Randle complaining to the referees. I think most players around the league do it. Randle's trying to get posture with the referees just like anybody else. And I think ultimately, it's going to work out for him. I think that's just how it is.
Well, here's the thing. Just take it yourself. Like, put yourself in any situation. If a guy is coming at you aggressively as opposed to calmly, is your reaction is going to be based off of how they're acting. You know what I mean? That
not with referees, Tony. Referees have ego problems.
That's just life. You have to know how to approach different people, is what I'm saying. Randle, this is two times between last year and this year that I've seen him approach a referee aggressively after a game. Like, aggressively. There's a way to do it. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't look good aesthetically, and you better believe referees see that, talk about it, and remember it. You disagree with that?
I do. I truly do. Look at a player like Draymond Green. Let's throw Draymond Green out there, for example. He's always arguing with the referees, but I think he has a lot of respect. The referees have a lot of respect for Draymond Green, but he's always arguing with the referees, throwing his mouthpiece, jumping up in their face. He has a very aggressive kind of alpha type of mentality with the referees, and Draymond Green still does the same thing, and he still gets beneficial calls to him. So I don't think
not always. I think he also gets calls against him because of that reputation.
But what I'm saying, a player like that who's that demonstrative with the referees, right? You would think that majority of calls will go against him, but that's not the case with Draymond Green.
I also think with Draymond Green, that's who he's been consistently throughout his career. Like, Randle is developing this. That's not a good sign. You don't think?
So Randle's developing, yelling at the referees. So Randle just started yelling at the referees last season.
The reputation is what I'm saying. That wasn't who he was. A lot of times he would walk off and be visibly upset, but walk away from the refs. I'm not going to say something. I'm going to take it out on the next play. That's who he was traditionally. As of recently, he's been going the opposite direction, going towards the ref, expressing his dislike. That's visible to me.
What I'm saying is even if he does do that, right? I don't think that is a leadership issue. Now, if you want to say that, him getting the technical fouls and all that at the end of the game, yeah, I'm with you on that because that's costing the team, right? So I'm not defending that part. You can't get a technical foul at the end of a close game. That just can't happen, right? You take yourself mentally out of it and you start doing stuff like that. That's going to cost the team. I'm not defending that at all. But to say that, Randle's arguing with the refs a lot more, so that somehow affects the team's leadership and their I don't really feed into that. I don't think that's I guess right now we're just reaching for something to try to find an answer, and I don't think that's the answer or the reason. That's what I'm saying.
I haven't even really said it's a problem yet. I'm trying to say he needs to chill out before it becomes a problem, and I definitely could see it falling that way. If he continues to act this way, it's going to become a reputation thing. And now he's going to not get calls based off reputation. You don't think a referee swallows the whistle when a guy um is kind of like complaining about every play and things of that? You don't think that happens?
I think sometimes it does, but I don't think referees go out of their way and say, okay, Julius Randle has the ball. I'm going to call a foul on Julius Randle just because he got in my face the last game. I don't think it's that either. You know what I'm saying? I think these referees, they're under a lot of pressure. They sometimes they don't make the right calls. You know what I'm saying? But that's just naturally what happens in a basketball game. And Julius Randle and any player for that matter has the right to be frustrated with that. I don't see. I don't see this. I don't think there's anything wrong with being frustrated with the referees and expressing your frustration. Because if Lord knows if he does it in the press conference, he gets fined. So what are we saying? And then Julius Randle comes out in the press conference and he says that the referee told him specifically that it's because he's a bigger dude. That's the reason why they can't make that foul call.
I think that's the right thing to do, and say exactly what he did in the presser. That was the right thing to do. What he did on the floor was not.
I just think that no matter what, because the Knicks are losing, these questions are going to come into play, and people are going to use stuff like this or Julius Randle complaining to the refs at the end of the game as a reason to why the Knicks aren't being led well or not doing so well. And I just don't think that it really matters that much for me, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion about
All right. Well, I mean, I guess we're gonna agree to disagree a little bit on this one. You agree with some of the points, the late game technical fouls and
it. Oh
things
yeah,
of
no
that nature.
question, no question
You
about
know what
that.
I
That
mean?
cost the
But
team.
you think it's blown out of proportion. I don't think it's really been blown out of proportion. I think it's been a talking point for some people. And I think it's been a lot of valid points. I don't think it's been overblown. But I think that's where we kind of disagree. You think it's just been overblown. You acknowledge some of the issues there.
Can I,
And
can I highlight
yeah,
one of these comments right here, Tone?
absolutely,
Chevron
man. You
Productions.
you know you the moderator, live moderator.
So I think this is a very, very important comment right here. It says, Chevron Productions, thank you. He says Randall's going to be Randall because when he's passive, the fans say he's not engaged, right? You know what I'm saying? And when he's passive and he doesn't say anything to the refs, it shows that he doesn't care, right? And then when he does do some of this stuff, it shows that he's a bad leader and he shouldn't do that and this, things of that nature. I think it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. That the team's not winning, you're going to
Mhm.
hear these type of narratives, and that's what it comes down to. If the team is not winning, you're going to start hearing all of this stuff, which is not necessarily true. And I think that's exactly what this is in regards to Randall, talking about the refs and all of that. You know what I'm saying? So,
Well,
um,
I'll say this. I was gonna shoot Randall some bail at the end. You know what I mean? Um, but I'll get a little bit into that now because I think um a good thing that he has been doing, or a good, it's been somewhat good that he's been trying to get his teammates involved visibly. You know what I mean? Like actively. And a lot of times, I think you've mentioned this a few times, guys just missing open shots, other than him. But it compounds the problem, I think, when not only are you giving up, which inside the paint shots, and being a little passive, and giving up shots for looks for open guys, but they're not making it. But then even when guys are finding you and you're wide open, you're missing them as well. So
right.
it's like, you know what I mean, like it's compounding the issue. But he has been actively finding guys. I think his passing instincts are progressing. I've seen him do a couple of passes this year that I probably never seen from him. I think he's made a conscious effort even to find like Mitch and Noel in some down situations down low in the paint where they're finding good positioning, which is like we didn't see that at all last year. Like nobody nobody was giving the ball to those two guys down low. Um, so I do give him his props in that. Um, but even his rebounding is down. Defensive rebounding. Um, and I think that's a big thing for him. But with these numbers, what do you think it is as far as the do you think confidence has anything to do with it? Um, or do you think he's gonna turn it around? Um,
I definitely think he's going to turn it around, but I do think confidence does play a little bit of a part in it, right? Last season when RJ Barrett was going through a slump, I said the same thing about him. Even though he's still taking some of the same shots, I do think that he does pass up a lot of those opportunities that are wide open to try to get a better shot at things of that nature. I've seen him do it in the Boston game. He wasn't shooting that well from the field in the first half, right? He was missing a lot of shots, and I've seen it at times where he got the ball when he was wide open, and he elected not to shoot it, and the Knicks, luckily were able to get a better shot after that. So I do think it is a little bit of a confidence issue, but I think all that stuff is going to be able to turn around once he gets into his groove, gets those shots to fall. I think that they will turn around eventually. Same with RJ Barrett. I think it's going to be the same for him. He's shooting poorly as well, but when the shot starts to fall, the Knicks start to win some games. I think all that stuff will turn itself around. So I do think it's a confidence issue, and I'm confident that he can be able to turn it around.
yeah, I mean, I hope there's a turnaround. Shout out to the Queens stuff, Queens Court in the building. Um, check out at 8 o'clock p.m. coming on, shortly after this show. Um, MBK fam, always in the building. Salute to you guys. Um, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I hope he does turn it around. It does. It looks. I don't even know if it looks like a confidence issue to me. Um, like the shots he does take doesn't look like a lack of confidence. I'll say that. But I don't think he's taking enough shots. I don't think he's nearly aggressive enough. Um, I don't know if the talk has gotten to him, but he's not even. It doesn't seem like he's playing as if he he feels he's the number one option. You know what I mean? Like last year, he kind of looked like I'm the guy. I feel like the guy. I'm gonna show y'all the guy. You know what I mean? Like he played with a kind of like a chip on his shoulder, and it really looks like he's just trying to figure it out still. Um, and maybe it's the new guys. Like that's the only thing that kind of correlates as far as like what could be the difference. Um, so let me go there. Do you think we lost that much defense that it just made the entire thing that much harder?
Yes, I believe it's obvious. I call this.
Or or because we cannot take into the fact that Kimber Walker and Fournier have underproduced offensively. You know what I mean? We could all probably argue that they've done exactly what we thought they was gonna. Like they weren't worse than we thought they were defensively. I mean, maybe Kimber with the numbers that came out, but you know. So do you think it's all the combination of the lack of the offense? You think if they came on offensively, even with the lack of defense that they provide, do you think we would still be in this type of a situation, slightly better or somewhere closer to where we thought you know, well, not you, but a lot of us thought we was going to be? I was in that 50 win club, right there at 50. So I'll include myself in that.
Well, I mean, listen, it's definitely a little bit of both, right? Defensively, the Knicks can't really hang their hat on defense anymore, right? I think they did lose something by bringing in Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier. I think that's obvious, right? But it also doesn't help it, and the fact that the reason why we brought these guys in to help us offensively, that they're not producing right there as well. So I think it's a combination of both, right? But we knew that this was the type of defensive guys that we were getting when we made the deals happen. When we let go Alfred Payton and Reggie Bullock, we knew that this is what we were getting, right? I believe ultimately, if their shots start to fall, right, I think that the defense will eventually pick itself up. The Thibodeau defense, I think, will ultimately show itself. It's just that we won't be able to rely on it game in and game out. I would like to see, and I think this is the reason why we brought these guys here. I would like to see these guys knock down their shots. I would like to see these guys, us be a high octane type of offense to score 110 to 112 points per game, 114, something like that. And defensively, I believe we can win some games if our offense is up there, and defensively we can just hold teams. I'm not saying stop teams, keep teams under 100 points. I'm not saying that. But at least if we're able to make some key stops down the stretch, I believe this team is way different, right? So I do agree with you. I think it's a little bit of both offense and defense. I expect our offense to come around because at this point it's just missing shots, and I think that stuff will come around. And I think we will play good enough defense for us to be able to win some games at the end, because that's naturally what Tom Thibodeau's teams do. So
All right, I'm a segue into your you know, I'm gonna use this to segue into your topic of choice. Um, and I'm gonna start with Kemba Walker. I think we agreed mostly about Tibbs' handling of the situation with him demoting Kemba Walker and putting him in the situational uh position. Um, I didn't like it from the beginning, especially coming from a starter to not playing at all. I remember his comments about his views as Kemba as a starter, and to me, like that doesn't fly with me. I think we agreed, you and I, if that's your position and you're feeling, then just continue to reduce his role, reduce his minutes, but keep him in that starting lineup. We've seen him do that with Alfred Payton last year. Um, we've seen him maintain that starting position, whether he played 6 minutes in the whole game or played 24 minutes, or you know what I mean. But we've seen him keep him in that starting spot and limit his minutes. I think that's the way he should have went. I'm surprised, knowing how stubborn Tibbs is as far as reputation wise, at least, that he didn't, keep him in the starting lineup. Um, we're gonna disagree a little bit. I know when you give your take, but for the most part, I agree with those parts right there. But yeah, the floor is yours, and I will respond.
well, I just want to ask this question. Remember when I said that if Tom Thibodeau, benched Kemba Walker, there may be a little bit of rift in the locker room. And now we're starting to get reports that there's this rift in the locker room, and you have some players that are taking Kemba Walker's side, and you got some players that are, Tibbs loyalists or what have you. And it happened just the way I predicted it was going to happen. Listen, as fans, I understand that we're frustrated, and that it's easy for us to say, "Oh, pull him out, take him out the game, take him out, take him out." You know what I'm saying? And don't play this guy a little bit more, but and the setting of a team, right? And the setting of a professional basketball team where you have veterans and you have young guys, right? You can't just make that move all willy nilly. I understand what the stats say and the plus minus and all of that, but again, there's a hierarchy in these locker rooms, right? And it goes at every level of sports that there is. There's a hierarchy. Guys are going to get looked at as respectable guys because they've been around the league, because they've been around. If you played in high school sports, you know that the seniors, right? The seniors have the respect in that locker room, right? So again, I just always felt that this could potentially happen, and now we're seeing that there's a rift that's potentially happening right now. And I think that if that is the case, if it's the case, because again, we just don't know. I'm just going by off the reports that I'm reading and everything like that. Then Tibbs' job is in jeopardy. Tom Thibodeau's job is in jeopardy if that's the case, where you have, you have players, particularly veterans, that are going against the coach. You're forming up against the coach, and now you're potentially affecting some of the younger players that are here. I
Well,
think that we may hear some talk about Tom Thibodeau's job being in question, especially if Kemba Walker was a complete front office move and that they didn't have anything to do with it. That there may be a little bit of that.
so when you brought this up originally, you know what I mean, like before it kind of even happened, or after first game he didn't play, and you mentioned this. I was one that disagreed with you, only because what I cited was who Kimber is as a player. The sportsmanship award type guy that what I mean, knows his role, but so I definitely called that 100% because I think he handled it like a professional.
Handled
As,
it,
as, as
how though? You talking about in the media?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think,
One hundred
and that,
percent, and on the bench, during the games, the
what
way he
about
cheered, like
what
he was
about in
Theo
the
Penson on the bench.
what about
That's
in the
what I'm
locker
talking
room?
about.
What about in the locker room?
I don't know what goes on in the locker room.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't
And that
see what goes on in the locker room. But that I'm telling you, what I'm saying is why I disagreed with you at the time. And had Kimber not be Kimber, had it been any other player, then I would have I would have agreed with you or off jump, because I know any other player, they're gonna make comments. They're gonna pout on a bench. They're gonna not cheer their team. You know what I mean? Like, they're not gonna be the professional. So I'm only telling you why I disagree with you, because of who Kimber is as a player. But you can't bring up the locker room argument without definitive proof that he's caused something in the locker room.
No, again, we don't know this. We don't know this. But the reason why I was disagreeing with you, because again, it's easy to go into the media and say the right things. It's easy to be on the bench clapping and cheering, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind closed doors, particularly in a benching like that, right? There's no way that any player that's been a veteran, right, a veteran in the NBA for a long time that still thinks he has something to produce to this game is going to take it well that he's been taken completely out the rotation. We may not see that as fans watching the press conferences or watching the games, but I think it's deeper than that. It's the locker room, inside the locker room, at practices, right? And this is why I had to. Hold on. This is why I had to say what I said in regards to that, because a lot of people don't understand playing on a team. Like, there's that dynamic that's there, that exists. It's like the elephant in the room.
Say that. The elephant in the room, I agree with. But when you talk about like things that go on in the locker room, all we've heard was good things. Anybody that spoke about Kemba Walker was, he's a true professional. He comes to the locker room.
That's what they're supposed to say, Tone.
No, they don't have to say that. They could omit saying that if it's not true. I think it's true. I think he showed professionalism. I think he didn't change his routine from being in the locker room to not being in the locker room. Now, what I do agree with is the elephant in the room, the unspoken word, the energy and the personal thoughts of some of his teammates and things of that nature. That I can agree with. But to say that he could be causing a problem behind closed doors, I don't think that's Kemba. That's never been who he is, who he was. Like, you talk about
Kemba Walker's also never been benched and taken out of a rotation.
Absolutely, but he's acknowledged that. I've never been in this situation before. He's acknowledged that. So
Tony, I'm not blaming Kemba for anything. I'm not saying it's all his fault. He's the
all right.
reason
So
why.
I mean, let's keep it on Tibbs then, because I think that the only part we disagree on I mean, let's keep it with what we agree on, which is not agreeing with the decision, right? And,
right.
Let's talk about, like, I'll talk about that a little bit. Because I think there's other ways he could have handled it, and I think a complete benching was totally wrong. I think if I think that argument that you only see him as a starter, I think that's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard from a coach, because now you're putting him in a box. You know what I mean? Like, he can't do anything if he's not
right.
Who he was.
But what I'm trying to say is, and I think we agree that it wasn't the best decision. But again, I'm talking about the consequences because of that decision, right? That's what I'm talking about. Like, my reasoning is different from yours. If you want to take Kemba out the rotation or take him out from the start lineup because he's not playing well, fine. I'm totally fine with that, right? But again, I'm thinking about the consequences of said decision. Right now, he could have went about it a whole different way. He could have said, Kemba, or reduced his minutes, did a gradual, a gradual thing where you take some minutes away from a decline in minutes or what have you. But from one day to say that he's a starting point guard to the next day taking him completely out the rotation, I think that was completely wrong. Maybe he could have put Kemba on the bench, have him be a solid bench guy, a contributor off the bench. But then how does that fit with him and Derrick Rose there? Right? How does that work? How does that dynamic work? So again, there's multiple ways Tibbs could have did it, but I'm just looking at it from the consequences standpoint. I personally would have never taken Kemba out the starting lineup. I personally would have not done that, because again, I'm looking at everything in totality. I'm looking at
So what are the consequences? What can you directly reflect to him being taken out of the rotation.
Well, I'm just going by what I'm reading and what's being rumored around the Knicks right now. That there is a
Mm-hmm.
rift in the locker room. That's what I'm talking about, and I think it's because of that decision.
The rift personally between him and Tibbs,
Yes, and
or
yes,
okay, because all right, because I'm just trying to make sure that we're because I've heard that as well. Like, well, I've heard what Tibbs hasn't spoken to Randall since the benching. You know what I mean?
Kimba,
Like, and
Kimba.
Kemba since the benching. So I've heard that. Um, Let me bring up something that I've highlighted a couple of times, and I don't think it's been reciprocated or spoke about enough. Um, Prior to the last game when Kimba came back, which I'll speak about that as well. But prior to that game, he's only played 9 minutes without Randall. So
Mhm.
all of his minutes all season long, minus 9 minutes, was with Randall on the floor, and I think that was another reason why I didn't agree with the benching overall, because you're talking about you didn't give him a try to even see what he looks like running the floor with an OB, a quick, you know what I mean, a
Or
quickly,
Rose.
or Rose. I mean, I agree. I wouldn't have ran the 3 guard lineup with them. So if I was doing that, I would have had to move quickly up or move Rose up and then keep him in that second unit. If that was me personally, like I wouldn't have ran Rose. You can't play Rose, Kimba, and quickly on the floor at the same time. I don't think so. I agree with that, but I think you could have promoted quickly. You could have promoted Rose and did it that way. Um, but yeah, only 9 minutes with Randall. I don't think that's a fair sample size to even like. I mean, it shows Tibbs really believes he only thought he was a starter and he could only play with the starters because he didn't get a chance really to play with the bench guys. What are your thoughts on that and how that might have fit or worked?
Well, yeah, that's another reason why I wouldn't have made the move. Again, that's just I look at everything. I don't just look at the whole riff thing. Also looking at that part of it as well. That's the reason why I wouldn't have made that decision. And then to start Alec Burks to make him the starting point guard, to me, it does not make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think Randall and Kimball were starting to come into their own a little bit. A little bit. It was starting to actually, they started to build something there with
They were
that.
playing their best ball together when he got benched.
Right, right. That's why it just has a lot of questions around surrounding that move, and I don't know if personally I would have made it like that. That's just my opinion on that.
And then this rift between them. Um, if we both agree that he has the right to be upset, but he's handled it publicly the right way, privately would be the way to resolve whatever issues they may have. And I mean, granted, yeah, there's been leaks, but not leaks like Knicks pass. You know what I mean? Like these are like speculatory leaks. I mean, let's be honest. There's no name dropping. There's no this is what happened when it happened. There's none of that. You know what I mean? It's like sources say or this might be. So the fact that it is mostly behind closed doors, isn't it still like kind of being handled in the right way? Like, do you think your concern is somewhat overblown, being that it's not full blown public knowledge? They are beefing. This is what happened.
No, I don't think it's overblown at all. And here's my reasoning. When you kept saying, "Well, Kemba Walker's going to handle it well in the media. He's going to cheer for them on the bench," to me, that's all fine and dandy, right? That's what a veteran is supposed to do. But again, there's still that locker room. The locker room is where they spend most of the time. It's not during the basketball game or in the media, right? These guys spend most of their time in the locker room. So what may look like everything is all sunshine and rainbows in the media may not be the case. And then when you have a team full of young guys that you're trying to develop, right? And then you have a very huge thing like taking someone out the starting lineup who's a veteran in the NBA for a long time. That's a big thing in these locker rooms. And now you're also hearing that some players are on Kemba's side, some players are fine with it. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal.
When you say or let's speculate what that means, as in on Kemba's side. Because if they feel the same way you and I feel, that maybe he shouldn't have even been benched at all, like he should have remained a starter and worked around him still being a starter. Even if they feel that, that means they're on his side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think ultimately they respect the coach. They respect the coach's decision. And then if let's say they don't, this is a hypothetical question, but do you think it's do you think players should be able to express that, teammates, or not the guy directly affected? Obviously you feel like he should as well, but do you think the teammates should be able to express that? And do you think the coach should respond to what the team, let's say three guys on the team and Kimba, so that makes four, feel like, yo, maybe you should have kept them in the starting lineup? How do you think Tibbs is supposed to react to that?
I think Tibbs has to find a way to get the locker room on the same page, whatever that means. I don't
All
know if that means,
15.
yeah, all 15 guys have to be on the same page. That's the coach's job. That's literally what he's supposed to do, right? And
I
again, when you do something like that, and I predicted these types of issues will come up again. And this is all speculation right now. I'm
mhm.
just going by based off the reports that I've seen and the leaks that are coming out or whatever. The Knicks PR doing everything they can to hide it and show Kemba Walker as being such a nice guy. He's so nice. He's from the Bronx. You know what I'm saying? The team putting that out there. Behind closed doors, I think Tibbs is going to be a struggle for him now to try to find, that balance and being able to get these guys on the same page. Maybe, if Kemba Walker gets traded, maybe you get that presence out the locker room. That's probably something that the organization can do as a solution,
Mhm.
right? Or you keep him on the team, and hopefully it can be able to fix itself. But I personally don't think it can. Not with him on the team. There's no way.
I
There's no
mean,
way.
I think if they can't find a trade, I don't think
Buy
it's
him
like,
out.
I don't think it's that detrimental. Um,
I would buy
depending
him
on
out.
how that works as far as like this year and next year. Like if we're buying him out to still be paying, like for that money to still be locked up next year somehow, I don't know how it works. Then no, I'm not doing that either. I'll wait until I find the trade.
Well,
Excuse
well,
me.
well, well, well. Here's the thing, Tone. So I did a thing early on the controversy. I put the Knicks salary cap out there. So the Knicks are not going to have that much money coming off the books this offseason anyway, right? The only way for the Knicks to improve this team, if you want to add players to this roster, is via
I know
trade.
it's trade. I know.
They 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 have they have
I,
to do that.
I watched the show today, Josh.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
was in there. But
So so
what
I
I'm saying is the buyout. If his money is dead cap, like when I say dead cap, mean like you're paying him to not be there, similar to the stretch with Joe and Noah.
oh, that's
I'm
different.
not.
That's a different thing.
I know it's two different terms,
Yeah, yeah.
but when you buy someone out, you're paying all the money this one year, and then whatever they're giving up.
That depends. Like that, it all.
Like that's what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna. I'd rather keep them and move them when we can, or try to implement them
I
somehow.
would not. I disagree with that. I wouldn't want to keep someone, particularly if it's a locker room issue. If there is a locker room issue, if
Okay,
there's a rift,
okay.
I personally, I would just eat the money. You're not paying them that much anyway. I would just eat it. You're not
Mm.
going to have that much money coming off the books next year. I would just do that personally. I mean, he doesn't make that much money. You can be able to buy him out and be able to live. Live. You know what I'm saying? I think there's a way they can be able to work that out. But having him in that locker room, if there is a rift, is more detrimental to the team than just keeping him around and waiting for a trade, in my opinion.
Mm. I agree with you in the sense that he probably will take a low buyout because he's already getting paid from the previous buyout. So I agree with you in that aspect. You could probably get him to go for 4 million out of the whole 18.
If he asked for his
You,
whole thing, if he asked for all of the $16 million that
you're
he's
wild.
owed,
You're
I
wilding.
would give him
You
that. I
playing
would
you
give
playing with you playing with other people money now. Like you're not putting yourself in that shoes. Nobody wants to do that. Like,
$16 million
but
is not a lot of money to him. In the NBA, that's not a lot.
it is if you can't end up using it for something else.
But they weren't going to be able to do it anyway with his money on the books.
They
That's what I'm
would
saying.
they would in a trade. They
Well,
would
again,
in a trade
if you can't find a trade partner, what's the reason of keeping him around to
because
widen that
because
rift
you
in the
have
locker room?
because you have a whole another year and a half to find the trade.
I don't know. See, and that's where we disagree. I'm not willing
I
to
mean,
keep him in my locker room and wait for a trade to come around. If it even does come around, well, I can just get him off the right now. To me, it's just too. It's too. And you got young guys that you're building up. No, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm not.
I mean, if the thing is you saying he's setting a bad example for these young guys, then I agree with you. But I don't think he is. I,
I
I
think the
think every I
situation
think
is.
but even with the situation, these kids are learning how to be a professional. That is
Mm-hmm,
priceless. You know what I
mm-hmm.
mean? Like that is priceless. So the fact that he still does that, he still mentors these kids, he still shows up to practice like I'm a starter when I'm not playing. I think that's priceless. You can't that's stuff that you don't. First of all, when you learn that as a young guy as a rookie or whatever the case, you keep that for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Like those are lessons that may not ever be taught.
I feel like the Knicks can go get that somewhere else, rather than have a guy on the team that's involved in a rift. I'm not saying it's his fault or the coach's fault. Again, we don't know. But to me, the pros outweigh the cons by by getting rid of this guy. They
Yeah,
just do.
we had it last year in Theo Penson. The difference was Theo Penson didn't have the back career of a Kemba Walker. So I think Kemba being who he is just as important to being the person he is as well. You know what I mean? Like being who he is as a basketball player is just as valuable as far as the mentorship as who he is as a person and what they're learning from that. I think you
I guess we'll see. But listen, I think we can go find a cheerleader somewhere else. We can go to Dallas
eh,
Cowboys. They got a million cheerleaders. Go get one of them to sit on the bench.
I mean you're right, but if you're gonna pay him anyway, if it's gonna cost you anyway, keep him there because that is a priceless value. Like you can't really you can't put a number on what they're learning just from how professional he is.
Tone,
And,
it's
and,
over.
and
It's over. Kemba's is gone. It's over. He's
I
over
mean,
with now.
I'm not mad if he's gone. I'm not mad. I'll tell you what though, his good game didn't make things easy.
Nope.
Like that didn't look good aesthetically, especially if guys were already questioning it. Like they could have kept it to themselves. Other teammates who feel a certain kind of way. You know what I mean? They could have kept it to themselves. Because I do believe 14 guys on that team, they know who Tibbs is. They know they gotta respect Tibbs'
Wait,
decision.
when you say
You
when you
know,
say keep it to themselves, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
maybe maybe people agreed. Maybe people felt like Tibbs handled it the wrong way, but like who am I to
Tony,
go to
that is.
like go to Tibbs and say, "Hey Tibbs, you sure you want to do that?" Like knowing
I mean,
who, especially
I
if
almost
if
caught you.
they coached him last year, if he coached them last year, they know who Tibbs is. They know like when you make it to situation, that's where you are. You got to accept it.
I almost called you tips for a second. Tony, listen. In the dynamic of a team, what you just said is impossible. On a team, that's just that. It happens. These guys are going to talk to each other. That's what
I
teams do.
I say kept it to themselves as far as addressing Tibbs. That's what I'm
We
saying.
don't know whether they address tips or not.
Yeah,
We don't know
I
that.
know, I know.
But that's what I'm saying. Like to keep it to themselves and that type of that. Like the elephant in the room is going to be addressed in the locker room. It just
Hmm.
is.
Or in a group text or in a you know what I mean or at a movie theater or dinner like yeah they're gonna talk about it at some point if they feel some kind of way if they're hanging out or if they're in the locker room the practice facility like somebody is gonna ask something or say something hang in there it'll be all right he'll turn around somebody might be telling Kimber yo I was there last year or this guy was there last year and made it back out. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm sure it's not like nobody's saying anything, but I don't know, man. Until something definitively comes out that there's a problem, I'm not gonna run with the narrative because I think they media wise, and not saying you particularly, but even for us, it makes good content. You know what I mean? Like and that's the New York market for you. So I don't and it goes against his character of who he is as a person. Period. You know what I mean? For him to be the guy that sparks it. Now maybe some guys do agree with him. I don't doubt that at 100%. We as there's some fans like you and I that agree that it shouldn't have been handled the way it was. So I don't doubt that players feel that way, but I don't think that could be like the end all be all of or the doomsday situation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think let me read Tony's mind for a second. Let me just read his mind for a second. He thinks that after Kemba Walker got benched and was told he's taken completely out the rotation, that Kemba Walker walked into Coach Tibbs' office with a Bible and they started praying. That's what Tony's thinking right now, ladies and gentlemen.
That is 100% not true because the reports are they haven't spoken. But even that I think is wrong. I think they should have spoken. I think they should be able to speak. Hey coach, when you know what I mean, what do I have to do to get back in the rotation? Like what do I have to show in practice to make my way back into the
That
rotation?
should tell you. That should tell you everything you need to know right there. These guys, you got a veteran guy and a veteran coach that have not spoken in over a month. That should tell you. That should tell you everything you need to know about that situation right there. That there's no communication. Think about that for a second. No communication between a veteran player, former All-Star, and a coach.
I mean, that's why I agree that I think his time is done here. I think it is. I think they're gonna find a trade for him. I don't think
Hopefully,
because there's been reports too that nobody's interested in Walker. That's been reported. I don't believe it. And speaking of which, in about 9 minutes, we're gonna be talking about. I believe that's the topic tonight. Some trades and scenarios.
next week in review with Queens Court. Next week in review, and we're going to talk about all this stuff is going to come up again. So we definitely
So
going to touch on it.
yeah, I'm gonna hold some of my thoughts. Because I got some thoughts on some moves that we could possibly make. So we'll get into that in Queens Court. Um, the people on man, thank you guys for joining as always every week, 6:30, 7 o'clock sometimes. Nicks and bruises. Josh has been consistently on. The Queen has been consistently on. I'm looking for new guests. I'm looking for new subscribers as well. So hit that like button, hit the subscribe, leave a comment, tell your friends. I'm trying to be consistent with it. So yeah, we gonna end it off like that. Appreciate you guys as always, man. Yo, Black, it's time, and I'll see y'all next week. Peace.